on back to the 4th and 30 podcast. Last week you heard us talk a lot about basketball. We got a little more of that coming back up for you. You might notice that there's two of us right here. I'm back in Missouri for the time being, so it'll just be easier to do it here. So we're at the All-Star break in the NBA, and there's a team sitting in second in the West that might surprise some people. We got Phoenix sitting in there. Are the Phoenix Suns pretenders or contenders?
I think I think they are contenders to be a darn good team during the regular season, and not to discredit Chris Paul at all for what he's done in Phoenix, but I think when you come to a 7 game series in the West, I just don't know that they can stack up with the Lakers and the Clippers and possibly even the Jazz. I mean, the Jazz are starting to look like the real deal. They're kind of thinking we're a regular season team, but Mitchell and Gobert are going to do their thing. Mike Conley got the honor for the All Star. There's no discrediting what he's done so far this year. I think Phoenix might be sitting second in the West right now, but in my opinion, they're probably the fifth, maybe sixth best team when it comes to a 7 game series.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to agree with you. I've got a couple things here. So, Devin Booker named Western Conference Player of the Month this month tells you he's been playing out, at high level this month. Um, Not saying Devin Booker isn't a great player, but I don't think he's the best player in the Western Conference. So I don't expect him to continue to play at that level. Um, they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. The Lakers are 4-6 in their last 10 games. No Anthony Davis. The Clippers are 5-10 in their or 5-5 in their last 10 games. Realistically, I think they're 4-5 games ahead. Let's just put it this way: the Western Conference is a very close race right now, from 2 to 8. After 8, it drops off a little bit, but there's not a lot of difference between the 2 seed and the 8 seed. To be completely honest, Phoenix could realistically finish 8th in the West this season. I mean, that's a realistic possibility. Will they? Probably not. I think I agree with you. Probably about 6 or so would be about where I see them finishing. But are they going to beat the Lakers or the Clippers or the Jazz or two of those teams in a 7 game series to make it to the finals, to have to play the Bucks or the Nets or the Sixers and have to beat them in a 7 game series? No, they're not going to do that. They're playing very well, and it's a testament to Chris Paul and Devin Booker how they're playing. Um, DeAndre Ayton is great. Honestly, they have a lot more talent there than people talk about Paul and Booker and Ayton. They got Bridges, Sarek, the Cameron Johnson out of North Carolina. He's a good stretch four for them right now. They got Crowder, Kaminsky. They have a good lineup, but they don't have anybody that's going to match up with LeBron and Anthony Davis. They don't have anybody that's going to match up with Kawhi and Paul George. They're a good team. They're a solid team. They're not a great team. They're not a contender in the West.
And when you start talking 8 people deep, like a playoff rotation usually gets shortened to 8 or 9 players, they're not at the same level as the Clippers, Lakers, Nuggets. I'd also say Jazz and Blazers as well. They're just the other teams are just deeper, 8 deep.
See, I actually think you're wrong on that. So Phoenix has 7 people right now that are averaging double digit in scoring. The only other team in the Western Conference that has equal to or more than that is San Antonio. They have 8 guys doing it. But like the Lakers have 6 guys doing it. I think the Clippers only had 5 guys doing it. Like when I look at a team to see if they're a contender, how deep are they? If you're going to go through half your season, you've got 7 guys averaging double digits a night, and you do have a superstar like Devin Booker, and you have a great facilitator like Chris Paul, and Chris Paul might be a big reason why they have 7 people averaging 10 points a night. But I really think that does make them contenders. I think there's more contenders in the West than people want to give credit to. Like everybody wants to talk about the Jazz and the Lakers and the Clippers. Well, all 3 of them can be beat. Last year in the bubble, it was a little different. You kind of, if you had momentum on your side, you kind of ran with it. But this year is going to be real playoff series. Home and away. If Phoenix goes in and steals a game, you might be screwed. So, I do think Phoenix can be a contender this year because, odds are you have one of three teams coming out of the East, and I think Phoenix can play with any one of them. So to like get to that final goal of winning the finals, I do believe Phoenix is a contender this year.
Before I make my point, I'm getting a little creeped out with your arm around Cody there, Carl. But
Rub my back
uh,
for me.
Phoenix is a contender because they have Chris Paul. Chris Paul is a gamer. Playoff Chris Paul is a real thing, and that I would be worried about the youth of that team if it wasn't for Chris Paul. I don't forget about when every Chris Paul. You've seen what he did with OKC that last year. They were a game away from knocking the Clippers off, right? And they were, when he was in Houston, Houston's peak came when Chris Paul was there, and they were up 3-2 on the Warriors. Chris Paul goes out with a hip injury. They lose both the next two games. They very well could have knocked off the Warriors with him. So as long as they have Chris Paul and he's healthy, I can see him winning a 7-game series. Just the way Chris Paul controls the pace of the game, his knowledge, his IQ. I could see him, leading a team like that to win a few series.
So I really like Chris Paul. No disrespect to Chris Paul, but Chris Paul has exactly 0 rings, and I don't think Phoenix is going to change that for him. That's no disrespect to Chris Paul, but I don't think that Phoenix is a contender because of Chris Paul. He's been on better teams in LA and they didn't win. I don't think it will change in Phoenix.
Dirk didn't have any rings either, and no one thought they would win it when they did. I just get a feeling this might be Chris Paul's year.
That's very fair. I don't think because of Chris Paul they're going to win. I don't think it's saying because they have Chris Paul they can win the finals is
Also,
right.
people forget about what experience can do for you in the playoffs as well. And Chris Paul is as experienced as player as they get, and he will be great in the playoffs like he is every year. I hope for the sake of the NBA that Devin Booker doesn't fall off at all in the playoffs. But the rest of those guys, they might be 1 year away. If Chris Paul can stay healthy, and this time next year I might, and stay on the same level, I might be singing a different song. But it's just rough when you're going in there with a bunch of young guys. I mean, Chris Paul's playing on a really young team with a bunch of guys who don't have a lot of experience.
Yeah, but I think anybody can beat anybody, and if you catch the Lakers wrong, if you catch the Clippers wrong, they're going to roll you. But I do think that they can play with them. So, Phoenix has a lot of good young talent that's big, and so that can help you out. If you could, I'm not saying you could ever contain Anthony Davis. He's a freak of a guy, but if you can at least hold your own down there with a collection of people, that gives you a better chance than trying to play somebody at 6'8" as a stretch 5. But Kyler brought up Houston when Chris Paul was there, and I kind of want to stay with that for a moment. Houston's owner brought up this week when Brooklyn came to town that they're going to retire James Harden's number. Kind of a surprise, but yeah, I'm sure we're going to get into it here. So, who has thoughts on that?
I'll let you two guys go first because I might get long-winded on it. So go right ahead, get your points
I'll
across.
start. Yeah, it's a surprise, and I don't agree with it. I mean, that guy, he never won you a championship, and just the way that he exited that. Mine's going to be very simple. The way he exited and tanked this year and demanded a trade, that would completely right there make up my mind. Your number will never be retired. You came here as a free agent. We put some people around you, and then you gave up. That I wouldn't retire his number. I think that's a horrible decision.
So I'm gonna tell you a couple people. Well, first of all, James Harden's time in Houston: 9 seasons, 9 All-Stars, 2018 MVP, averaged 29.6 points, 7.7 assists, 6 boards, 1.8 steals. They made the playoffs every year. To argue that James Harden didn't have an amazing career during his time in Houston would be asinine. Is the timing right? No, I don't think they should have retired it right after he left. Absolutely not. To be completely honest, 9-year stretches, there aren't very many better 9-year stretches in the NBA. Honestly, 29.6 points, 7.7 assists, 6 boards, 2018 MVP, made playoffs every year. Houston was struggling before Harden got there, and then I would say most people would consider them a top 4 team in the West the entire time he was there. Um, I just looked up a few guys that they have retired jerseys for before. Clyde Rexler was one. Clyde Drexler had 2 championships. I want to preface with that. Obviously, 2 rings is huge. Clyde Drexler only spent 5 years in Houston and played alongside Hakeem Olajuwon, and James Harden's stats are way better during his time in Houston than Clyde Drexler was. Clyde Drexler was at the end of his career. He had a couple really good years in Houston, but then fell off. The 2 rings are obviously the reason why he's in there. Calvin Murphy, if you want to date a little bit further back, James Harden's stats are way better than Calvin Murphy's. And Calvin Murphy won exactly 0 rings in Houston. I have no problem with this. People are living in the moment, having a problem with it. Is it the right time? No, but James Harden had a great career in Houston. To argue he didn't is crazy.
Yeah, well, stats aside, I think retiring someone's jersey is a loyalty thing, and there's no loyalty left in the NBA. And so, to me, unless like Dame Lillard, he's Steph Curry, those are the 2 people I can think of that, as of right now, I could see their jerseys getting retired and it being. But to me, it's a loyalty thing. I don't retiring someone's jersey is, thanking them, and I mean he did put in a lot of years there, but the loyalty thing is what hangs me up. I would not retire someone's
Yeah.
jersey that wasn't loyal.
So I'll
I
let
would.
Cody go because he's got some.
Okay, so first thing first, Kels, I agree that down the road, Harden's number should be retired. I don't disagree with the retirement at all. I disagree with the timing of it, like we talked about. I don't think that now was the right time to do it. Like Kai said, dogging that last little bit. In a few years, when you can reflect on how good he was for 9 years for your organization, yes. But I think it's a PR stunt for the Rockets. Second of all, looking at, like you said, at who all's jerseys were retired. Clyde Drexler, he only won 1 ring in Houston, but 1 ring is enough to get your.
They made the finals twice. My bad.
Yeah, they 1 ring is good enough to get your number retired for being a great player. He was a great player when he was in Portland, and then he came to Houston pretty much ring chasing, but he helped him accomplish that. So, yeah, that's on him. Yao Ming. Yao Ming gets it on his importance to the game of basketball as a whole. He was a great player who put up numbers worthy of that, but it's because of his influence in China. You got Calvin Murphy, Moses Malone, who I didn't even know he played for the Rockets. I thought he was a 76er from day 1 to day 1,000. And then Hakeem Olajuwon, no doubting that. And then Rudy Tomjanovich, who maybe gets some credit for his coaching accolades as well. But I don't see Tracy McGrady's number anywhere on there. And you want to talk about stretches for a team, I will keep this short and sweet and not go in. I could be here the rest of the night talking about Tracy McGrady. But what Tracy did for Houston was unbelievable. And don't anyone throw out the didn't win a playoff series. Go back and watch 05, 06, 06, 07, I think is when it was, when they played the Jazz in the first round back-to-back years. What he did you cannot discredit him for not winning a playoff series for what he did in those 2 playoff series alone. But, like I said, when you've got organizations in Houston where Tracy McGrady's number's not retired and he left, he was traded away. Like, he didn't even want to leave. He was traded, and you guys didn't retire his number. You got guys like KG, who I think they actually just retired his number. I don't know for sure.
He's retired in Minnesota and Boston.
Okay, and he should be in Minnesota, but he wasn't for the longest time. Much less the next year when he was in Boston, they didn't retire his number. He is the only bright spot that franchise has ever had, and it took forever for him to get his number retired. And there's more situations like that. So why is James Harden's number being retired? I agree, 5-10 years down the road, by all means retire it. He's a great player for your franchise and brought you 9 great years. But now was not the time or even close to it.
So I actually don't think they should ever retire his number. So what he has done by forcing that trade and publicly pooping on the Houston's organization, he devalued that franchise, both monetarily and how much they're actually worth, and in the face of everybody. So he crapped in the face of all the fans. He crapped in the face of the ownership and the coaches and just said it's a dead situation. Well, if it's a dead situation, you feel that way. We have no reason to ever honor you. So when you retire somebody's number, they better have done the absolute most. So respected your organization is the biggest one, because now you're going to give it back to them. So an example of that would be like Oklahoma City retiring Nick Collison's number, which, young franchise, they moved from Seattle, but, he was there the entire time. So, like, I get little instances like that, but this is becoming an issue in more than basketball with this, retire the number, retire the number, retire the number. It's bullcrap. So you better have done something great. You better have won. You better not have just been there. So, Albert Pujols, when he finally retires, he's going to end up have spent most of his career actually in LA. I'm fine with that because he had the best 10-year streak of any major league hitter ever when he was in St. Louis, and we won 2 championships because of it. So St. Louis will retire number 5. I'm good with that. Like, it makes sense to do that because he still loves St. Louis. He still technically lives in St. Louis. He still supports the community and all that. That's what you need to be doing to get your number retired.
He also left like a gentleman, though. He just got more money, and the bottom line, St. Louis didn't want to pay him what the Angels did, and I guarantee now that they wish they would have, but he deserves to have his number retired.
And Harden already has his jersey retired in that strip club.
Every strip club in Houston. Every strip club in Houston.
There's only so many two-digit numbers, and I feel like retiring numbers should be reserved for GOAT status, and I don't include Harden in that argument as well.
Honestly, Harden probably,
but not retire it.
Harden probably had the third best 9-year stand in Houston behind Hakeem Olajuwon and Yao Ming.
Yeah, and I agree that if you're going to retire numbers in Houston, James Harden makes the short list. But you have to retire his number when you have Calvin Murphy, Moses Malone, and Rudy Tomjanovich on there, and Clyde Rexler. Clyde Rexler was a great player, but he didn't do enough in Houston to have his number retired. If you're talking the stature that the rest of us are talking, where you should have to do something great, GOAT status, like Kai said, you should be one of that franchise's GOATs.
I agree. If your argument is teams should retire less jerseys or less numbers, I'm not arguing with that. I'm saying James Harden in Houston makes that list. I'm saying James Harden had a good enough career in Houston to make that list. I'm not saying today was the right way to do it.
To be fair,
but I'm saying James Harden's on that list.
To be fair to James Harden, too, is they were one Chris Paul hamstring away from winning a championship that year.
And another thing, Carl said James Harden devalued the franchise. Houston's franchise was in the tank before James Harden got there. The value comes from James Harden. Like before James Harden, it was T-Mac and Yao Ming years when Houston was relevant. The franchise's value comes from Harden. So you can say he tanked it all he wanted, but the value that he tanked was what he created.
But you still shouldn't be retiring numbers of people who crap on your franchise. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'd say the franchise crapped on James Harden for the 9 years he was there, but that's just me.
They put him in a position to win championships.
How did they put him in a position to win championships?
They were one game away. They were one game away. That was going to – they
and
were going to breeze.
30-10, and they're one game away.
Harden shot like 21% in that game 7 or something like that.
Yeah, when they missed 26 straight threes or whatever. Like, it's not the franchise's fault they lost that game. That's for sure.
I'm not questioning Harden as a player.
James Harden had Chris Paul, and the Warriors had Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson, but the Rockets did a heck of a job of trying to
one game away.
The Rockets did a heck of a job trying to put talent around James Harden to put him in a.
I mean, they did a fairly decent job. If you look at Harden's playoff numbers, I'm not arguing Harden is not a good player. He's a great player. but his playoff numbers tend to drop from the regular season a little bit. And the only reason they were in that, not the only reason, Chris Paul had a lot to do with them being up 3-2, and you saw it when he went out. Not question James Harden again; he's a great player, but when you back to the, they did a pretty decent job of putting a championship team around him. They were very competitive. They had a championship caliber team.
Let's not act like that Warriors team wasn't. That's the greatest group of talent ever put together. So you can be a championship level team. But if you're going to stack it up to that,
can't compare them to the Warriors.
If you're going to stack them to that Warriors team, you've got the early '90s Spurs, some of those Lakers teams, the '95, '96 Bulls, and I would say the year that LeBron won in Cleveland, and then maybe the Miami team. Like, those are the only other teams with that much talent.
You said '90s Spurs. Did you mean like mid 2000s?
Well, that too. I think that David Robinson, Tim Duncan team was pretty special.
Oh, like,
or I guess that'd have been 99, yeah. But anywho, I mean, there's on one hand probably teams that could compete in a 7-game series with that Warriors team.
Why did they compete with that Warriors team?
Because of Chris Paul. He was really good.
Chris Paul,
You're
baby.
absolutely insane.
Chris Paul, my guy.
James Harden is the reason why they were in that series. That's what I'm telling you guys.
If you
can argue that they were in that series all you want, but they were in that series because of the guy we're talking about,
and
not because of all the
that
talent around
series
him.
because of James Harden. Because
They
James
were
Harden
only in the
couldn't
series
throw,
because of James Harden.
but they still lost it because of Harden. He could not throw it in the ocean when it was the biggest moment. Just bottom line. They got to Game 7 because of Chris Paul and James Harden. They lost Game 7 because James Harden could not make a jump shot. Bottom line. There's no way around that.
James Harden shot 23% from 3 in that series. 40% from the field. So, that's not efficient. That's not winning. That's not winning championship
How many points
basketball.
Did he score? How many points?
28 points a game, and he shot the ball 164 times in the series.
So 28 times 7 is close to 200 points. So he's
averaged
over
about a point a shot.
He's over a point a shot.
Barely. Yeah.
Okay.
And when you shoot as many free throws as he does, that's...
Listen, 40% from the field.
That's part of his game. That's part of his game.
You're right, but that doesn't make you an efficient player. Or efficient in that series.
It does make you more efficient because you're getting free throws. That makes you more efficient.
You're also missing a lot of shots.
I'm alluding to the fact that his numbers have consistently fallen in the playoffs versus the regular season, and the facts are there.
I'm alluding to the fact
had he played like he did in the regular season, they might have won.
If you take Chris Paul or James Harden, either one off that team, it's a 4-game sweep, no matter how you want to look at it.
And we saw.
I agree.
Chris Paul got hurt.
They lose 2 straight.
Harden couldn't do
and
it.
And
they lost.
It has nothing to do with Harden not being able to do it. Cody's saying exactly what I'm saying. The only talent they had with him was Chris Paul. You're saying what I'm saying. They had nobody else on the team. You've got to get him talent to win a championship. That's my point. That's the entire point I'm making.
Remember that. Hey,
is completely over.
You have a 100% argument right there, Kels. Remember that when we start talking about LeBron James. Remember that, okay?
LeBron's played on some great teams. I don't even want to hear it.
When you compare their lineup to the Warriors, yes, you're right. They didn't have the talent to stack up, but they didn't have a bad team. I mean, I don't think that. What else could they have done to put more people around him?
But your guys' argument is that James Harden crapped on the Rockets. The reason why the Rockets were relevant was because of James Harden. That's my
an excuse to crap on him, though.
Yeah, but the Rockets also went and got James Harden, so it was on them and saw that. It's not like Harden chose Houston.
I think Kelsey, sometimes you forget how much money these players make, that the organization is paying to them.
Players make money to play.
And Magic City in Houston thanks him kindly for paying him that amount of money.
The reason why the Rockets made so much money was because of James Harden. Like you're saying that the Rockets
two-way street.
The reason why the Rockets were bringing the money was because of James Harden. That's how it works. That's how business works.
It's a two-way street, yeah.
All right. That's enough James Harden for right now. So we have a what was he thinking? There was something come up here. Was this last week or earlier this?
It was early this week, I think.
I think it was a week ago yesterday, so last Saturday, not yesterday, but last
All right.
Saturday.
Kai, you want to walk us through the McDermott situation?
Well, basically, he used the phrase "get back on the plantation" when referring to, I guess his team, right? About getting back to work.
So I believe it was after a tough loss, and he told his guys he didn't want anybody to leave the plantation. We don't need anybody walking off the plantation. So,
Yeah.
They all
I,
need both feet in the plantation.
yeah. So in his mind, I I don't think he meant it the way it came out, but it did come out that way. He was trying to rally the troops and say, "Hey, stick with the program. We got this." But he said something incredibly stupid.
Yeah, and he's been placed on a suspension, I believe, and obviously, I don't believe he meant to use those words, just kind of heat of the moment kind of thing. But in today's day and age, yeah, what was he thinking? There's 100 other analogies you could have used, and you used plantation. One of the
There's thousands of other analogies
Yeah,
you could
I
use.
mean, the I don't know how you come back from that. I know he asked his players if they wanted him to resign, and they said no, obviously, because they have their relationship and they know
Yeah.
that he didn't mean that. But you don't come back from this.
And good on him for putting his players first and asking them. I would rather him resign due to his players thinking or wanting him to because of what he said, more so than the school just coming down on him. Um, I think maybe the school should have been a little harsher on him. I mean, he's put on leave, right? I don't paid or unpaid. I don't know what it is. Do you guys know?
Administrative leave, whatever that means.
Okay,
I don't
but
know if he's paid or
but
not.
back to you guys talking about the analogy that he used. We all know in a professional setting, whether it be an office environment or like myself with coaching high school kids, the wheels, when you're talking to kids, bosses, employees, whoever, the wheels have always got to be turning on you in your head of, is this a good thing to say? Is it not a good thing to say? And we've all let curse words slip when we shouldn't have, or maybe let out something that we shouldn't have at some point in time. But you have to, I mean, you have to suffer the repercussions if you let something slip. And that's what's happening with him. But I can't say that it's not deserving. And I'm not trying to attack his character at all. It might have been an honest mistake where he let the wrong thing come out of his mouth, but it was the wrong thing, and he's gonna probably pay for it.
So I actually did a little research on him just to try and get some background information on him. He's never had really anything before that's tousled his character. I mean, he seems like a stand-up guy. That being said, I just don't really know how one you say that out of anything you could have said, how you say that. Um, I don't I don't know how that's what he decided to say. I don't know how in his mind he thought that was a good idea to say that. I understand he's talking to him post game and maybe he wasn't thinking clearly, but I don't know how that's what you decide to say in that situation. And two, I just I can't say that the dude doesn't deserve to be fired. Honestly, I mean,
Yeah,
honestly, I just don't know how that's what comes out of your mouth in that situation. I'm not saying the guy isn't a great guy and he isn't a stand-up guy and he might be the highest character guy there is. I don't know, um, but I I wouldn't be surprised if the school ended up firing him.
I
I want
mean,
to. I want to know where he came up with that analogy in the first place. Is my thing. Like I've never heard that before.
I've
So,
never heard that, and that's what he
it's
says.
just an
Like,
odd thing to say.
I think the school has to fire him because this is going to affect his recruiting. A lot of people are not going to want to go play for this guy now, whether it's deserved or not. It is what it is, and that will be part of the consequences. And I think this might just be the end. He's done a great job there. Might be the end of his road, and it might be the best direction for the school as well, just because of how it affects the recruiting that he gets in years to come.
And it's a tough decision for the school because he has been successful. He has done a good job with that program, but it's almost inevitable. Like there's only so much you can do. You can like the recruiting part of it. It's going to affect that badly. Um, it's going to be in the news for however long. if he goes off in a post game interview sometime with reporters, they're going to go back to that about what he said that one time. It's going to be hard to get away from. And the sad thing is that mistake, no matter where he goes, it's going to follow him too. Whether he goes to
Yeah.
another smaller college school, if he goes and coaches high school, he's going to always be the guy who said that. And like we said, we don't know if he meant it derogatory or not, but whether he did or didn't, he still said it. And it's going to probably affect his professional stature the rest of his life.
I was going to say, coming into this, if he had won more, you said he's been successful. I was going to say if he had won more, he'd probably keep his job. But he's been at Creighton since 2010. They've made the tournament 5 times. They've never made it past the second round. And all 3 times he made it to the second round was with his son, Doug. So, I don't even think he's been that successful at Creighton.
Well,
he's been semi-successful.
For a school like Creighton,
Yeah,
to
for a
make the
mid-major.
tournament 5 times, that is success. That's success right there. You're not going to win a championship at Creighton. Like, making the tournament.
Missouri Valley makes the tournament a lot. Creighton's in the Missouri Valley, right? And they moved to the Big East now. So Creighton's not like an incredibly small. Like you get 65 teams, you win your conference, you make the tournament.
Yeah, but you're looking at 5 out of 10 out of is Missouri Valley a mid-major? Is that what they would call
Yeah.
that?
And 3 of them are with his son on the team though, who's an NBA player.
It's not a Shaka Smart kind of run, but how many people do that? I think he's had a good run. I wouldn't call him, a Hall of Fame coach, legendary, but for Creighton, he'd be in the Creighton Hall of Fame.
You're kind of overshadowed by Butler, and there was another school, Wichita State. That's who I was thinking of. Those other schools who have been very successful when it comes to mid-major play and tournament play. But for a school like Creighton, a mid-major, to make it 5 out of 11 years, I'd say that's pretty darn successful.
All right. So now we're going to bring back something that we got some positive feedback on, is him or him. And I'm actually going to kick us off today. I saw this on Twitter. When was that? Maybe yesterday. It was trending on Twitter. So somebody came out with, should Blake Griffin be a Hall of Famer? And that started, Blake Griffin can't be a Hall of Famer till Chris Webber's a Hall of Famer. So, him or him, Blake Griffin or Chris Webber, to get into the Hall of Fame.
I'm going Chris Webber. More skilled.
Chris Webber.
Longer. Chris Webber had some injuries, but I think for the most part, I don't know the numbers, but longer career. Better for longer, I should say. I don't know exactly how many years Chris Webber played, but Webber was better for longer.
The Basketball Hall of Fame takes into account college too, and
they let everyone in.
Yeah, Chris Webber should already be a Hall of Famer. Side note though, on a crazy stat I heard yesterday, Blake Griffin hasn't dunked the ball since December of 2019.
Yep.
In a game.
Yep. 0 completed dunks this year, or I guess that would be last year too. Yep.
So Blake.
Go ahead, Kai.
Blake Griffin and Chris Webber, obviously. Chris Webber as of right now. Blake Griffin can still prove a lot, though. He's got some time left. And a couple hours ago, the Nets announced they were signing Blake Griffin. So I think it's a good chance for him to do something kind of like Chris Webber did. Go to a team where he's not the focal point and fit in and find your role and still be productive. If he does that, I could see him maybe getting into the Hall of Fame at the end of his career. But until he does that, Chris Webber's my choice. Chris Webber was more of a role player type guy. Blake Griffin kind of always relied on his athleticism. And now that you see that he's lost some of that athleticism, his game's kind of fallen off. He needs to come into New Jersey, find his role, and really just adjust his game to fit that team. He's not the superstar he once was.
Brooklyn.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and
same thing.
I'll keep it basketball. I got a football one too, but I'll keep it up for basketball around the horn. Who are you taking? Jason Tatum or Brandon Ingram?
So Brandon Ingram, I think, has like some more flexibility in what he can do than Tatum does. And he's proven to be pretty efficient down there in New Orleans, so I'd probably take Ingram.
I would take Brandon Ingram. Tatum's a little stronger, probably a little better defensively, but Brandon Ingram has a more complete offensive arsenal for sure. His ability to score off the dribble. I would take Ingram.
Jason Tatum. Brandon Ingram has three more years in the league, right? And Jason Tatum's averaging more points already. He's a more polished player at a younger age. Brandon Ingram took a few years to kind of get there. And just as far as shooting percentages go, Jason Tatum's the better shooter.
I thought we were doing this for right now. Are we not still doing the right now?
I would take Tatum right now.
You're talking about age. Okay, you were talking about age, so that was throwing me off for a second.
Yeah, I'd take Tatum. He's younger and more polished, and his game's just going to continue to grow.
I'm taking Ingram, and I've been certified, signed, stamped, and sealed as a Jason Tatum hater, and
you're definitely a Jason Tatum.
And I embrace that at this point in time. Jason Tatum's a good player. I think he's overrated. I think Brandon Ingram does just as much as Tatum does, if not a little better, on a far less talented team. In New Orleans, you've got to guard Zion, Ingram. That's it. Make sure Lonzo doesn't get a fast break. The Celtics have they have Jaylen Brown.
Whoa. You're gonna throw JJ Redick in the dump like that? That dude's unguardable.
No. I'm supporting one Dookie right now. I'm not gonna talk good about two Dookies. So.
Well, you did Duke versus Duke, so we were kind of in trouble anyway.
Yeah. Well, I love JJ Redick, as I think everyone does. But if I'm already talking highly on Brandon Ingram, I can't go too in detail onto JJ Redick.
All right, so I'm going to do a little shift on mine. My him or him is Mitch Trubisky or Cam Newton.
Ooh.
Neither.
Right now. Not age doesn't matter. Just right now, Mitch Trubisky or Cam Newton. Well, one of them's going to start next year for sure for somebody.
Mitch Trubisky, I feel like, does have more wherewithal right now, more ability to play winning football right now. Granted, it's not going to be like Super Bowl football. Neither one of them's capable of that anymore. But I don't think Cam Newton has it in the tank. He's got it to prove, he wants to prove everybody. But I don't think Cam Newton has it in the tank. He doesn't have as much physicality on people that he used to, which is why he was successful. And he was successful during his time. But right now, I would take Mitch Trubisky if you're on one of those kind of borderline teams. If you're, if you went 4 or 5 and, 12 or 11 last year, Mitch Trubisky might make you a 6 or 7 win team, which, he's going to be serviceable. So I would take Mitch Trubisky over Cam Newton at this moment.
I'm going to take Cam Newton just on the fact that maybe New England, don't roll your eyes at me, Kai. Maybe that the New England situation wasn't right for him because he was not that bad a couple years ago. 2015 MVP, and I know we're talking right now, but he obviously has the skill set to be something special. I don't think Trubisky does, and I'm going to take Cam Newton on my team if you're hoping it's just the right scenario for him and that New England wasn't the right scenario.
I don't know if there's a better scenario for Cam Newton than New England, so I'm definitely going with Mitch Trubisky. Cam Newton can't throw the ball. He's inaccurate. He has a long windup, and now anymore he can't run the ball like he used to. So Mitch Trubisky actually played decent last year, I thought. I think he has the better throwing ability out of the two, and Trubisky can run too. He's not as physical as Cam Newton, but watching Cam Newton throw the ball just makes me think I could play quarterback in the NFL. So I'm going with Mitch Trubisky.
You wouldn't be saying that if he was the starting quarterback for the Steelers next year. You wouldn't be as high on him.
I'd rather start Devlin Duck Hodges than sign Cam Newton and have him be our quarterback.
How is New England the best place for Cam Newton, though? New England has no weapons.
The GOAT coach.
He's without Tom Brady, he's had a great career.
All right, who's next?
All right, I'll go. We'll switch it up here a little bit. Greg Popovich or Phil Jackson?
Ooh. I'm gonna
Who was
go.
the better coach?
I'm gonna go Greg Popovich because he was a great X's and O's guy. I don't know if there's a better X's and O's guy of all time in the NBA. Phil Jackson's specialty was managing personalities. So if you threw him on the Brooklyn Nets right now, I think Phil Jackson might be the better coach. But if you're just taking your average NBA team trying to win a championship, I'm taking Greg Popovich just because of how brilliant he is.
Well, I'm a Spurs guy, so we both know where I'm going with this. But didn't Jackson come up with the triangle offense?
I was gonna say Cody's never heard of the triangle
So
offense.
isn't that a pretty
Do you know-
large X's and O's thing?
First of all, Phil Jackson did not come up with the triangle offense. It was an iteration of what one of his assistant coaches taught him what to run. And there's a reason. There's a reason only 2 teams ever out of all the teams who've tried to mimic the triangle offense have been successful with it. It's because it's not an X's and O's thing. It's putting the right players in the right positions. Is all it is. It's not the movement of the offense. It's not the intricacies of the screens and the off ball stuff and all that. It's just Jordan Pippen, Kobe, Shaq, like. You're winning because of those players, not because of how the Princeton 5-out offense is a brilliant X's and O's offense. What Popovich did was brilliant, okay? Some of the stuff that Doc Rivers and Eric Spoelstra runs is pretty good stuff. All the triangle offense is getting your 2 best players and a third guy who's serviceable on one side and telling everyone else to go piss off to the other side of the floor is all the triangle offense is. And Phil Jackson did a great job of getting Kobe and Shaq and Jordan the Pippen the ball and Hyden Rodman weak side getting rebounds or Hyden Robert Horry at the top of the key to shoot threes. There wasn't anything special about the triangle offense.
All right, well, we'll agree to disagree about how the triangle offense is the most basic offense in the history of mankind, and you just stood in your spot and picked your nose while you waited for Kobe or Shaq or Jordan or Pippen to score the ball. That being said, what we have to go off of, I mean, obviously, Shaq's 11 rings Phil Jackson's 11 rings speak for themselves. That time in San Antonio for Popovich, I mean, yeah, he had Duncan, he had Robinson, but he didn't have Kobe and he didn't have Shaq and he didn't have Jordan. That's a tough one. I would probably lean toward Popovich just because he didn't have Kobe, Jordan, and Shaq. That's probably what's going to be the deciding factor for me. That being said, 11 rings speak for themselves. I mean, yeah, I'd go Pop.
I think what Cody is saying is the triangle offense, in order for it to even be effective, you have to have superior talent. And, credit to Phil Jackson for having the superior talent to run it. I'm going Popovich as well. I don't think there's been a coach that I've ever seen get more out of talent than he has. It's very hard in the NBA to win with a talent deficit. And I'm not saying he didn't have talent, but he drafted those guys, he developed those guys. And that's what puts him over the top for me. Phil Jackson was brought in by the Bulls. He was brought in by the Lakers to take over teams that were already built. Popovich built his team from the ground up. If I'm starting a franchise, I want Greg Popovich, no questions, just due to his ability to draft and develop and get more out of his talent than other coaches ever have.
And Popovich has paved the way for a lot of foreign-born players to play in the NBA. He's always been a huge talent evaluator on that, and that's credit to him. I don't think there's anybody who's had a 4-year streak like he's had now. Like, he's competitive year after year. Sure, and they've been down the last couple years, but he's competitive year after year. And Phil Jackson coached 3 of the top 5 or 6 players ever, like, of all time. So, you're going to win 11 rings when you could say you coached 3 of the top 6 players that ever existed on the planet Earth.
I know we got to wrap it up here pretty quick. But the Popovich Jackson talk has my wheels turning, okay, on the who's the better coach. So you got 2 guys. Greg Popovich made Patty Mills look like a good NBA player in his system, and Phil Jackson had Steve Kerr. I would say was about the equivalent of their roles on the team. And I'm not looking at stats. I don't know. I'm just guessing here on the eyeball test. But I would say that Patty Mills has as good or better numbers than Steve Kerr. And I think Steve Kerr is probably a better basketball player.
Ironically, you picked a guy that's played for both Phil Jackson and
true.
Yeah.
Popovich. But
But so that's the thing. Is like Greg Popovich makes Patty Mills look like a serviceable sixth man, fringe starter at times. I would say he's probably a double digit or close to career average guy. And in most systems, he's not that good.
I mean, I get the point you're trying to make, but Patty Mills also was almost Player of the Year in college. Before he came out, like he's not a bad player.
He
No,
was
he's not
definitely
bad.
more of an all-around player than Steve Kerr.
Yeah,
no
he's
doubt.
a way more all-around player than Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr can hit an open three, but
Bailey
I would
Jordan
say
out
the biggest thing about the argument is Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. I mean, I'm not saying we wouldn't know their names. Not saying they wouldn't be good NBA players, but they would not be the NBA players we remember them as if they didn't play for Greg Popovich. Not even close.
no, they wouldn't. So that's where we're going to leave you guys this week. We appreciate you tuning in and listening. You can find this on YouTube. If you do find us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. It's free. Don't know if you guys knew that or not. Go find us on Facebook. Drop us a like. Follow us there. We do have masks available, and we have a giveaway on masks right now. Go find the tweet on Twitter. Maybe drop us a retweet. You might get one of these in the mail. Who knows? The world might be your oyster. We appreciate you guys tuning in every week. March Madness is coming literally right around the corner.
Oh, yeah.
And there will be episodes on that. We appreciate you guys. Be good out there and tell your grandma.
Tell your grandma.